In a tranquil suburban area not far from Boston, Caitlin Johnson resided with her husband, Michael, and their energetic 6-year-old daughter, Emily. Caitlin had built her career as a nurse at the regional children's hospital, where her warm smile and attentive care earned the confidence of patients and their families alike. Even though her shifts often began before sunrise and ended late into the night, she always cherished her time with her loved ones above all other things. Michael, her husband, served as a police officer who took great satisfaction in safeguarding the neighborhood. His tall, sturdy frame reflected the demands of his job. But within their home, he transformed into a tender father who spent evenings reading stories to Emily before bed. No matter how exhausted he was after working overnight, he never neglected to help his daughter with her school assignments when she came home. And every weekend, without exception, the family carried on their tradition of heading to the park to play catch together. To Caitlin, Michael was more than just a strong, dependable partner. He was her confidant and closest friend, someone she could talk to about anything without hesitation. Their daughter, Emily, was a bright, active child who had inherited her mother's gentle heart and her father's strong sense of fairness. At her school, Emily was known as someone who always looked out for her classmates. Recently, she had developed a keen interest in playing the piano and practiced every single day without missing a session, delighting her family by performing the songs she learned. Watching her daughter blossom, Caitlin felt she was constantly discovering new lessons about motherhood. Caitlin's sister, Jennifer, had a reputation in the family for her extraordinary culinary talents. Her homemade cakes and cookies were especially beloved, and she never arrived at any family gathering without carrying a carefully prepared dessert. The bond between Caitlin and Jennifer was warm and close. They called each other several times during the week to catch up on news, seek advice, or simply share small moments from their daily lives. Jennifer's husband, David, was a quiet, sincere man who clearly adored his wife. Together, they had 2 children, Tommy, who was 8, and Sophia, whose 6th birthday they were celebrating that day. David was devoted to his kids. On weekends, the family often ventured out for hikes or spent time grilling in their backyard. The Johnsons and Jennifer's family made it a habit to see each other nearly every weekend, alternating between each other's homes. The adults enjoyed time to talk and reconnect while the children played and strengthened their bond as cousins. Emily and Sophia, being close in age, were particularly inseparable. They would spend hours playing with dolls, running around the lawn, and although small disagreements would sometimes arise, the 2 girls never stayed upset for long and would soon be laughing together again. For Caitlin, these family get-togethers were precious memories. The weariness from her demanding shifts at the hospital seemed to vanish the moment she was surrounded by the people she loved most. Michael, too, felt that these weekends were a comforting escape from the tension of his duties as a police officer. On a bright Saturday morning, the delicious fragrance of freshly cooked pancakes drifted through the Johnson kitchen. Caitlin turned her attention to Emily and Michael, who were seated at the counter, while she deftly flipped another pancake onto a plate. Emily, still dressed in her pajamas, was gently kicking her legs under the stool as she excitedly described her dream to her father. And then, Daddy, I turned into a princess and lived in a huge castle. But this dragon came, and I wasn't scared at all, she declared, her eyes wide. Michael listened intently, lightly smoothing Emily's hair with his hand. So, Princess Emily, what happened with the dragon? He asked with a smile. I made friends with him, Emily replied proudly. He was only lonely, that's why he came. As she overheard their sweet conversation, Caitlin felt her heart warm with gratitude for the life they shared. During the weekdays, their lives were so packed with work and school that it was rare to have an unhurried breakfast together. Because Michael's shifts often included nights, having all 3 of them seated around the table was a special occurrence reserved mostly for weekends, making mornings like this one feel all the more meaningful. Today's Sophia's birthday, Caitlin reminded them as she poured syrup over the stacked pancakes. What time did Jennifer say we should get there? She asked, glancing at Michael. He lifted his eyes from his coffee mug. She mentioned around 2 o'clock this afternoon. If we head out by 1:30, it should work out perfectly. We'll need to pick up gifts before we go, he answered. Caitlin checked the kitchen clock. Emily, have you decided what you'd like to give Sophia for her birthday? Emily grew thoughtful, tapping her chin. Well, Sophia likes dolls. But remember that book she saw when we went to the bookstore? She really wanted it. Why don't we get both? Michael proposed. Emily's face lit up with delight. Really? Yay! She cheered, bouncing up from her seat in excitement. Once breakfast was finished, they set out for the shopping mall downtown. Being the weekend, the parking lot was already packed with vehicles, and it took some time to find a space. Inside the toy store, Emily studied the shelves intently, trying to choose between a doll with golden hair wearing a pink dress and another doll with dark hair in a blue dress. At last, she declared, I want the one with brown hair, like Sophia's, and carefully picked it up. At the bookstore, they located the picture book Emily remembered. It was called The Magical Forest Animals, filled with colorful illustrations. Caitlin flipped through the pages and saw it told a comforting story about woodland creatures who work together to overcome all sorts of challenges. I'm sure Sophia will absolutely love this, Caitlin said with a smile. While they waited for the store clerk to wrap both gifts, Michael slipped away to get coffee from the nearby cafe. They sat down on a bench together as Emily imagined how excited Sophia would be to open her presents. I wonder what kind of cake Aunt Jennifer made this time, Emily mused, her voice full of anticipation. You know your Aunt Jennifer, Caitlin replied fondly. She probably baked something beautiful. Indeed, Jennifer's cakes were legendary among the family, especially for birthdays. Caitlin vividly remembered how, the year before, Jennifer had decorated Sophia's cake with pink buttercream roses that looked like something straight out of a professional bakery display. Once they returned home, Caitlin selected a bottle of wine to bring along as a gift while Michael went out to check over the car. Upstairs, Emily practiced singing Happy Birthday while she got dressed, her small voice drifting down the hall and bringing a tender smile to Caitlin's face. By the time the clock neared 1 o'clock, the Johnson family was ready to leave. Caitlin gathered the neatly wrapped gifts and the bottle of wine while Michael ushered Emily toward the car. Jennifer's house was about a 20-minute drive away. Emily settled into the back seat, carefully hugging the gift bag to her chest as she looked out the window, watching familiar sights roll by. Daddy, that's the park where we all had the picnic, she exclaimed, pointing through the glass. Michael smiled, glancing in the rearview mirror. That's right, he replied. Remember how nice the weather was? You and Tommy spent the whole afternoon throwing the frisbee. Caitlin turned in her seat to look at Emily. This summer, let's all go camping together again, she suggested warmly. Really? Yay! Emily cheered, her eyes shining. She recalled their last trip, swimming in the lake during the day and roasting marshmallows by the fire at night, and her excitement bubbled over. Their car gradually climbed the gentle hill leading into Jennifer's neighborhood. Along the quiet street, tidy gardens lined each side of the road, and the peaceful weekend atmosphere was everywhere. They passed by neighbors tending their lawns, washing their cars, and children pedaling bicycles along the sidewalk. We're almost there, Caitlin said as she recognized the last street corner before her sister's house. When they turned, they saw several cars already parked along the curb, suggesting that other guests had arrived early. Emily spotted the colorful balloons tied to the porch railing and waved out the window. Oh, look, there's Sophia, she called, her voice bright with excitement. Sophia was outside in a new pink dress, playing near the front steps with a few friends. Michael eased the car into an open space and switched off the engine. As soon as the vehicle stopped, the sound of children's laughter drifted into the car. Caitlin lifted the gift bag and wine, stepping out with Michael and Emily. Together, the The three of them walked hand in hand toward the front door. Sophia noticed Emily right away and ran over. "Emily! You came!" she shouted, beaming. "Happy birthday, Sophia!" Emily cried, hurrying forward to hug her cousin. Just then, Jennifer appeared in the doorway, wearing a cheerful smile and an apron that showed she had been hard at work preparing the party food. "Caitlin, Michael, thank you so much for coming," she greeted, brushing a wisp of hair from her face. "You're here at just the right moment. I'm almost finished setting everything up." Caitlin passed her the wine bottle. "Is there anything you'd like help with?" she offered. "No need," Jennifer assured her, waving a hand. "It's all under control. David is already out back getting the barbecue ready. Michael, would you mind giving him a hand?" she added. "Of course." Michael agreed easily, heading through the house toward the backyard. David was busy arranging charcoal and lighting the grill when Michael arrived. The two men greeted each other with friendly waves before they set about organizing the food. Meanwhile, the children chased each other around the lawn, their laughter echoing across the yard. Inside the house, Caitlin admired how beautifully Jennifer had decorated everything. A bright banner that read "Happy 6th Birthday." Sophia stretched across the living room, and the table was set neatly with plates, napkins, and an array of colorful party favors. "Everything looks amazing," Caitlin told her sister sincerely. "Sophia must be thrilled." Jennifer's eyes glowed with happiness despite the tiredness in her face. "Thanks," she said. "I stayed up really late finishing the decorations, but seeing how happy she is makes it worth every second." As Caitlin reached the car, her hands were trembling so badly she nearly dropped the keys. She ushered Emily into the back seat, trying to keep her voice calm. "Mommy, why are we leaving so fast?" Emily asked, confusion clouding her face. "It's all right, sweetheart," Caitlin murmured. "Daddy just needs us to go home quickly." She climbed into the driver's seat and turned the key in the ignition. Nothing happened. She frowned, trying again. The engine stayed silent. Her heart started to pound. She tried once more, pressing her foot harder on the pedal, but the starter wouldn't catch at all. "Why won't the car start?" Emily asked, her small voice turning anxious. "It's just being a little stubborn," Caitlin said, forcing a reassuring tone even as her palms went clammy. "Don't worry." She climbed back out and hurried around to the front, checking under the hood with shaking hands. But she didn't see anything obvious. Her pulse thudded louder in her ears. Then she crouched by the front tire, and her breath caught. The rubber was completely flat. A deep gash sliced through the side. She staggered backward and checked the other tires. Each one was the same, deflated and carved open. It was no accident. Someone had deliberately slashed all four tires. For a moment she stood frozen, her mind refusing to believe what she was seeing. Michael's warning roared back in her thoughts. "Don't go near David." Was it possible? Her fingers were numb as she fumbled for her phone and called Michael. He picked up instantly, his voice taut. "Kate, are you all right?" "Michael, all the tires. Someone slashed them. On purpose," she whispered hoarsely. A pause. Then she heard him curse under his breath. "Listen to me. Leave the car. Take Emily and start walking away from the house right now." "I'm on my way. I'm in a patrol car, less than 5 minutes out." "But, no arguing." He cut her off. "Pick her up if you have to. Go as fast as you can. Do not wait there." She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to steady her breathing. When she got back into the car, Emily was staring at her with wide, worried eyes. "Mommy, why aren't we going? What's wrong with the car?" "It's okay," Caitlin said, though her voice shook. "The car broke. But Daddy's coming to pick us up. We're going to walk to meet him." "Why do we have to walk?" "It's just faster this way, sweetheart." She reached back and unbuckled Emily's seatbelt. then took her hand firmly. "Come on," she urged, her heart hammering against her ribs. They began to walk down the street, putting distance between themselves and the house. Emily looked back over her shoulder, her eyebrows pinched with worry. "Mommy, is Daddy mad?" "No, love," Caitlin whispered. He's just worried." They hadn't gone far when the distant wail of a siren grew louder, approaching quickly. Caitlin felt her knees weaken in relief. A moment later, Michael's patrol car turned onto the street, lights flashing. He stopped the vehicle so abruptly the tires squealed on the pavement. Michael leapt out and sprinted toward them. He wrapped his arms around Caitlin and Emily at once, holding them so tightly Caitlin could hardly breathe. "Are you okay?" he demanded, searching Caitlin's face. "Did anyone touch you?" No, we're fine," she said shakily. "But Michael, please tell me what's happening. Why is David?" Michael looked around sharply, scanning the quiet neighborhood. "Not here," he said in a low voice. "Get in the car. I'll explain everything." Once they were all inside the patrol car, Michael settled Emily on his lap in the back seat. The little girl clung to his uniform, still looking bewildered by everything happening. Caitlin turned to face her husband, her voice low and urgent. "Michael, you have to tell me what this is about. You sounded terrified on the phone. Why did you tell me not to go near David?" Michael's jaw tightened as he drew in a breath. "Today, while I was at the station," he began carefully, "I was updating records in the sex offender database. I wasn't expecting to see anything familiar, but then I came across David's name." Caitlin stared at him, unable to comprehend. "David? That has to be some kind of mistake." His eyes were dark and serious. "I wish it were." But the information was clear. 10 years ago, David was convicted of sexually assaulting a child. He served 3 years in prison and has been under probation ever since. Caitlin's breath left her in a sharp gasp. "No," she whispered. "He's married to Jennifer. He has children. He's always been normal." "I didn't want to believe it either," Michael said quietly. "I checked the record 3 times to be sure it was really him. The details matched perfectly. Birth date, social security number, everything. Once I saw that, I couldn't take any chances with Emily's safety." Caitlin pressed a hand to her mouth as memories flashed in her mind. David laughing with the children, carrying Sophia on his shoulders, passing out slices of birthday cake. "It doesn't make sense," she said in a small voice. "And the tires, Michael. Do you think he did that so we couldn't leave?" Michael's brow furrowed. "It's possible. But right now, we don't know. It might have been a coincidence, or not." Just then, his radio crackled. "Unit 14. Come in," a dispatcher's voice called. Michael picked up the handset. "This is Unit 14. Go ahead." "Michael, we've got an update on that incident you called about." The voice continued. "A neighbor reported seeing a group of teenagers vandalizing vehicles on that street around 3 p.m. We're confirming now, but it looks like multiple cars were targeted, not just yours." Michael exhaled slowly, closing his eyes for a moment. "Understood. Keep me posted." He set the radio down and turned to Caitlin again. "So, the tires might have been part of random vandalism after all," he admitted. "But David's past. No matter what, that's still a fact." Caitlin swallowed, her throat so tight it hurt. "I can't believe Jennifer wouldn't have told me," she whispered. Michael looked down at Emily, who was leaning against his chest, tired and confused. "I'm going to have to confront David directly," he said firmly. "And I'll find out if Jennifer knows or if he's been hiding it from her." Caitlin nodded wordlessly. Michael started the patrol car and turned it around in the street, heading back toward Jennifer's house. "Stay here with Emily," he said when they stopped a few houses away. Lock the doors and don't get out until I come back. Caitlin held Emily close and watched as Michael stepped out, squaring his shoulders before walking up the driveway. From where she sat, everything looked deceptively normal. Balloons still fluttered on the porch. The laughter of children still drifted across the yard. But Caitlin felt like the world had split in two. Michael walked steadily up to the front steps, his uniform lending him an authority that made a few of the guests glance over in surprise. Jennifer spotted him first as he stepped inside. Her face tightened with worry as she noticed Caitlin and Emily were no longer with him. "Michael, what's going on?" she asked anxiously. "Where are Caitlin and Emily?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he swept the living room with his eyes, searching for David. "I need to speak with David privately," he said at last, his voice calm but clipped. David, who had just walked in from the backyard carrying a tray of grilled vegetables, looked up in confusion. "Sure," he said slowly, setting the tray down. They stepped into the smaller sitting room off the main hallway, the door closing behind them. The noise of the party faded to a distant hum. David looked at Michael expectantly. "Is something wrong?" he asked. Michael's expression was like stone. "I know about your criminal record, David," he said quietly. "I know what happened 10 years ago." David's face turned the color of parchment. His mouth opened, but no words came out at first. After a long, painful silence, he swallowed hard and spoke in a hoarse voice. I thought this day would eventually come." Michael didn't look away. "Did Jennifer know?" David closed his eyes briefly, as though summoning strength. "Yes," he said. "Before we got married, I told her everything. She knew all of it, what I did, what the terms of my probation were, the counseling, everything." Michael's brows knit together. "She knew," he repeated, not sure whether to feel relieved or more disturbed. "Yes," David said again. "She chose to marry me anyway. I've never hidden it from her. And I've spent the last 10 years doing everything I can to prove I'll never be that person again." Michael exhaled slowly, still wrestling with disbelief. "If that's true, why didn't you ever tell Caitlin? Or the rest of the family?" "Because it isn't something I announce at every dinner," David said quietly, his hands trembling. "It's shameful. But I've never denied it, and I've never allowed myself to be alone with any child. That's my rule. There are always other adults present." Michael was silent for a moment, measuring his words. "You understand why I can't just ignore this," he said at last. "I have to protect my daughter." David nodded, his jaw clenched. "I know," he said softly. "If I were you, I would feel exactly the same way." Just then, the door opened again, and Jennifer came in. Her eyes were red, as if she'd been crying. "Michael," she said, her voice steady but raw. "I'd like to say something, too." He looked at her without speaking. "I've known about David's past since before we were engaged," she said, standing beside her husband and slipping her hand into his. "At first, I was horrified. I won't lie to you about that. But over time, I saw how hard he was working to rebuild his life, to change. I chose to stand by him." Michael felt a hard knot in his chest as he looked from Jennifer to David. "Did you ever think," he asked quietly, "that the rest of us deserved to know? That we were trusting you around our children?" Jennifer's face tightened. "I did think about it," she said. "But I believed it was enough that David and I took every precaution. He has never been alone with a child since. And I thought, maybe, after all these years, we could just be a normal family." Michael shook his head slowly, feeling the weight of the moment. "I don't know what we do from here," he admitted. "But I need time to talk with Caitlin." David nodded. "We understand," he said quietly. "We won't run away from this. When you're ready, we're here to talk." 3 weeks later, the two families gathered again, This time not for a celebration, but for a difficult, honest conversation. The living room of Caitlin and Michael's house felt tense as everyone took their seats. The children were settled in the next room with a movie playing, their occasional giggles floating faintly through the doorway and offering the only hint of lightness in the atmosphere. Caitlin had struggled for days about whether to have this meeting at all. Since the afternoon when Michael had come speeding up in his patrol car, her mind had been a constant churn of fear, confusion, and sorrow. She couldn't reconcile the memories of David playing with the kids and smiling kindly with the reality of what Michael had discovered. She didn't know if she could ever feel safe again. But in the end, she and Michael agreed it was better to face the situation directly rather than pretend it hadn't happened. Michael cleared his throat and began, his voice quiet but firm. I want to start by saying this meeting isn't about blaming anyone. It's about deciding how we move forward as a family. David sat rigidly in his chair, his eyes fixed on the floor. His hands shook slightly in his lap, a visible sign of the strain he'd been under these past weeks. Jennifer was beside him, resting her hand on his arm in silent support. Caitlin took a deep breath and turned to David, her words coming out softer than she expected. Could you explain a little more about the counseling you're in now? David looked up slowly. His voice was low and steady as he answered. Every Thursday, I meet with a counselor who specializes in cases like mine, he said. Twice a month. I also attend a group therapy session. It isn't court-ordered anymore. It's something I do because I believe I have to. Caitlin nodded, feeling her throat tighten. Why do you keep going? She asked. David's eyes flickered. Because what I did can't ever be undone, he said quietly. I don't expect anyone to forgive it or forget it. But I have to keep working to make sure it never happens again. It's my responsibility to understand my own mind and control my behavior. Michael leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. If we're going to have any kind of relationship from here on, he said, there have to be some conditions. David raised his head and met Michael's gaze squarely. I understand. I'll agree to anything. First, Michael said, his voice unyielding. Emily is never to be alone with you. There must always be multiple adults present. Second, you'll need to share updates about your counseling on a regular basis. Third, if anything at all seems wrong, or if you ever feel you're not in control, you must call us immediately. David didn't hesitate. I accept every one of those terms, he said. Jennifer blinked quickly, wiping at her eyes with her free hand. I believe in my husband, she said, her voice rough with emotion. But I understand your fears. I would feel the same way in your place. And I agree. We can only go forward by being honest and careful. Caitlin felt a lump rise in her throat as she listened to her sister. She realized that, as impossible as it all seemed, Jennifer still loved this man and had built a life with him, knowing all the things Caitlin was only now learning. No family is perfect, Caitlin said, her voice hushed. Everyone has something in their past, some struggle they'd rather hide. Maybe family means not just sharing the easy parts, but also facing the terrible parts together. David's eyes brimmed with tears. Thank you, he whispered. I know it won't be easy, but I'm grateful you're willing to try. Michael sat back slowly. We'll rebuild trust a little at a time, he said. Short visits at first. If anything feels wrong, we'll stop. This isn't about pretending nothing happened. It's about moving forward carefully. Everyone nodded in agreement. The meeting lasted nearly 2 hours, with long silences and moments where nobody knew what to say. But by the end, there was at least a fragile understanding. It would never be the same, but they had all chosen to keep trying. When the meeting finally drew to a close, everyone sat in a quiet moment, letting the weight of what they'd shared settle. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then the movie in the next room ended, and the children came running in, all energy and innocence. Emily darted over and climbed onto Caitlin's lap, looking curiously from face to face. "What were all the grown-ups talking about for so long?" she asked, resting her head on her mother's shoulder. Caitlin smoothed Emily's hair back from her forehead, her own heart aching with everything she couldn't say. "Just family things," she answered gently. "Important talks about how we can all take care of each other and get along." Emily seemed satisfied by that answer and wriggled off to join Tommy and Sophia, who were already asking if they could watch another movie. In that small, ordinary moment, something in Caitlin's chest finally loosened. Later that night, after Jennifer and David had gone home with their children, Caitlin and Michael sat together in their bedroom, the house quiet around them. For a while, neither of them spoke. Finally, Caitlin looked over at her husband. "Do you think we did the right thing?" she whispered. Michael didn't pretend to know. He turned to meet her eyes and spoke honestly. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe there isn't any perfect answer to something like this. But I don't think running away would have made us feel any safer. We have to keep watching, keep being honest, and trust ourselves to see the truth if anything ever feels wrong." Caitlin nodded slowly. Beyond the bedroom window, the quiet neighborhood lay under the soft light of the street lamps. 3 weeks ago, everything had felt so simple. Now, she understood in a way she never had before that even the people you think you know best can carry secrets too heavy to imagine. But maybe that was part of what it meant to be a family. To love each other not because you were flawless, but because you had the courage to face difficult truths together. And to keep moving forward, step by careful step. Caitlin took a deep breath and felt something like hope stirring in her chest. No family was perfect. But perhaps, if you met each other with honesty, compassion, and the will to face hardship side by side, even the hardest trials could be survived. Believing this, she reached for Michael's hand. And together, they prepared themselves to greet tomorrow.